Hi, my name is Dr. John Douillard, and welcome to LifeSpa.com, where we prove the ancient medical wisdom of Ayurveda with modern science. And today, I want to talk about natural laxatives and the alternatives to laxatives that may actually be somewhat harmful to our intestinal health, right? You know, laxatives are a big deal. 70 to 80% of the American population have difficulties in digestion. Some 27% of the population use laxatives on a regular basis. $80 million a year are spent on laxatives. It's like a really, really big deal. And laxatives definitely have their issues. You know, in Ayurvedic medicine, the intestinal skin was understood to be really delicate. And you don't clobber it with anything harsh. And that was some of the takeaway that we take from ancient wisdom, was like, they didn't use harsh herbs or extracts of herbs or anticidal agents for candida, different things. It was always about supporting the integrity of the intestinal skin, therefore the microbiology, which Ayurveda called krimi. And they talked about this even thousands of years ago, that supporting the environment so the bugs can do their job was an important part of the immune response, which we now know to be in fact true, which is really, really cool. So this discussion today is about how we can support healthy bowel function without slipping into using laxatives that are irritating the intestinal tract, causing a bowel moving reaction, but actually possibly in the long run doing more harm than good. There was a study that was done with about 80,000 different volunteers, and they found that there was an increased risk of colon cancer from the chronic use of laxatives. Herbal laxatives weren't on that list, thank goodness, but even herbal laxatives have their issues. Cascara sagrada, senna, they're bowel irritants, and they work by stimulating or irritating the intestinal skin. The intestinal tract reacts, and then you go to the bathroom. Over time, the intestinal skin becomes desensitized to the irritation, and therefore can become kind of dependent on that irritation. That irritation can dry out the intestinal skin. When your intestinal skin gets dried out, they react by producing mucus. Your intestinal skin is lined with mucus-making membranes. So when you irritate them, that was stress or undigested food or laxatives, herbal or otherwise, you oftentimes see a reaction of producing mucus. And then when you produce the mucus, you go to the bathroom pretty good, right? Because you got this slimy mucus being produced to slip things up in there. So you go to the bathroom. In many cases, you can overshoot the mucus-making runway and not only go from constipation, which is dry, to loose, which is mucus production, to mucus in your stool, which means that you're producing so much mucus in the stool, you're seeing it, mucus in your intestinal tract, you're seeing it in your stool, which means the little villi of your intestinal tract are being bogged down by the mucus that you produce, which in the long run, not a great idea. So in Ayurvedic medicine, we talk about the perfect poop, right? We actually wrote an article called The Perfect Poop. We even have a perfect poop chart. You can actually go and you can look and see what our Vata, Pitta, Kapha bowel movements should look like. Generally, it's 1 to 3 bowel movements a day within the first hour of waking up. And you can go to that article called The Perfect Poop and read more about, you know, evaluating the different types of imbalanced poop that might be there, so you can figure out where is your, variable stool, imbalanced stool, constipation, loose stool coming from. Is it coming from Vata, Pitta, or Kapha? So that's another article, and there's a video there. You can watch that as well. But today I want to talk about, back to the laxative concept. What can we do to support our intestinal health and avoid the side effects of laxatives? The other type of laxatives, one was stimulating laxatives, we just talked about. The other ones are osmotic laxatives like magnesium and things that pull water off the stool. This is an interesting concept because we all think magnesium is great. It's super good for you, and it's a mineral, and maybe the one most efficient mineral on our planet is magnesium. So everybody can take magnesium, and it makes me poop good, so why not take magnesium? It's true that magnesium is a deficiency that affects a very large percent of the population. Taking a little bit of magnesium is not a bad idea. That said, that when you take magnesium to the point where you actually create a looser stool, that's happening as an osmotic effect. It's pulling water off your intestinal skin, bringing water into your stool, and then allowing you to have a bowel movement. The studies show that if you do that over time, you can dehydrate your stool, right? And if you dehydrate your stool, your intestinal skin, you're going to become dehydrated and your intestinal skin will become dry. And then we created a more chronic issue with bowel function and elimination than we had before. So the long-term effect of that, again, there's no real free lunch. When you're actually doing the job for the body, you're going to pay a price for that. Magnesium at a low dose for mineral support, fine, perfect. At a higher dose for laxative support can not only dehydrate the bowel, studies show it can demineralize your body. So it can suck minerals off your body, off your intestinal skin as well. And that becomes another issue that we don't want to become. Dehydrated and demineralized, not a really good idea. So a lot of the osmotic laxatives you have to be careful of because they have this long-term effect. The other kinds of laxatives, like bulking laxatives, we always think of like psyllium, which is the perfect example. You put psyllium in water, it sucks all the water off to the psyllium, and it expands and starts pushing against the glass. That's exactly what happens in your intestinal tract. You take psyllium, starts to expand inside your gut, puts pressure on your gut. Your gut goes, whoa, there's pressure here. We got to create peristalsis and get the bowel to move. But it's also dehydrating your bowel. It's pulling water off your intestinal skin, slowly dehydrating your intestinal tract, which in the long run, not a really good idea. Now, sometimes you'll see a little bit of psyllium in some of our Ayurvedic formulas, and that's because it's an old Ayurvedic concept to take something like psyllium that attracts water in a capsule that will actually bring water to the other herbs to activate the other herbs which are activated by water. So that's a strategy that we use as part of an herbal formula. Don't mistake that for psyllium being bad as a bulking agent. That's a different story and a different animal. Stool softeners, which are often prescribed by medical doctors, they're usually said to be used for a week at the max, and they have to be done under medical supervision because there's a lot of side effects there as well. So a couple of strategies here when you think about, okay, well, laxatives are sort of bad, so what do I do? Well, understand that the number one regulator of your stool is your bile. Bile regulates the consistency of your stool. Your bile, if it gets congested because of liver congested and bad foods and processed oils, that congest your liver and your gallbladder, produces less bile flow. Less bile flow means less bowel movement function, right? So this is really the fundamental crux of the matter. So if that's an issue, you want to think, okay, well, how do I move my bile? Well, maybe I can take some bile movers. They're called cholagogues. Things like, ginger and apples and beets and fenugreek increases the contractibility of your gallbladder by 75%. Turmeric increases the contractibility of your gallbladder by 50%. Apples, celery, beets as a juice, blended them all up in the morning, or a soup can be in the winter. We heat it up, blend it, make a soup out of it. A great way to increase your cholagogue function. Of course, all of your leafy greens, in the winter, steam them. Great way to get some of those greens, get those bile movers into your system. One of my favorite ways to exercise your gallbladder is taking 1 to 2 teaspoons of lemon juice with 1 to 2 tablespoons of a good quality extra virgin olive oil, and then take that before you go to bed for about a month, and to kind of exercise that gallbladder and give it a little bit of exercise. I have a free ebook called the Safe Liver Cleansing ebook, which gives you a whole 40-page understanding of this topic and ways to safely scrub, clean, detoxify, and repair liver and gallbladder function. So know about that and go to that as well. So those are some strategies. I've written numerous articles on bile function and bile function. We have many herbs to support liver function, including beet cleanse to Roto-Rooter the bile ducts to clean out the tubes from bile sludge, liver repair to increase your bile function. We revived an endangered herb called kukti, which you may all know about. We actually are supporting farmers in about 10,000 feet in the Himalayas who grow this endangered herb, and we have the certificates to be able to sell this endangered herb, to get it out of the endangered herb list. And that herb called Kukti was the #1 Ayurvedic liver herb for thousands of years until it got overused and endangered in 1997. It's now back. And that herb, Kukti, may be one of the best herbal cholagogues, bile movers of all. And super kind and gentle as well, which is what I really like about it. So those are some other strategies. But then you also have, what do you do for the intestinal skin? How do you support that? Well, taking soluble fiber. In the winter when it's dry, nature harvests nuts and seeds and foods that have more soluble fiber in them. So chia seeds, flax seeds, when you mix them with water, they get slimy. That's soluble fiber. Coating, soothing, and healing your intestinal tract. In the wintertime, in Vata season, when it's dry, we want to antidote that dryness with higher fat foods and higher soluble fiber foods, and they can really support your intestinal skin. And of course, in Ayurveda, the classic herb is called Triphala for bowel function. It tonifies the bowel, supports liver function. However, the word on the street about Triphala, when I first got into Ayurvedic practice back in the 80s, was that you can take Triphala for the rest of your life and no problem. So I got into practice and I gave people Triphala and they got better, but I couldn't get them off of it. And I really always disliked the idea of giving an herb to someone that they can never get off on, whether it be digestive enzymes or probiotics. We just don't get them off of these things and they become dependent. So it became clear to me the reason why they say you can take Triphala for the rest of your life was because a lot of people just never can get off of the Triphala. And that becomes something people take for the rest of your life. And there's no known side effects of that, but you got to take a pill for the rest of your life. I just felt like that wasn't good enough. So that's when we started formulating an herb where we put Triphala with licorice and slippery elm and a little bit of that psyllium we talked about into a formula to tonify the bowel with the Triphala and slime up and heal and repair the intestinal skin from being too dry or producing reactive mucus to bring the balance. And I was able to get people on it, get them better, and get it off. And sometimes we add a little bile support upstream and we solve this problem and get your body back to be able to pull digestion and elimination off on its own without creating dependencies. So that's sort of a really cool way. Obviously, I've written a lot about that. That product is called Elim #1, Roman numeral #1. You can read more about that on my website, look into that. But that's the strategy. The Ayurvedic way was to support the function. Be kind and gentle to the intestinal skin. Don't clobber it with irritating laxatives because there's never a free lunch. You always pay a price when you just take care of the symptoms and don't address the cause. Thanks all for listening. I'll see you next week.